Greetings, my fellow philosophical thinkers. This is LO3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful sparkling Mongoose of South Florida. And today's date is Thursday, March 15th, 2018. Looks like my computer's been having some issues, so I'm doing this on my phone. Had to wing it, and let's see if I could revive it or not. But hey, I have for a good 4 or 5 years. What can you expect, right? Okay, so I'm going to be doing a couple of topics here. I know people are talking about Donald Trump hiring, trying to appoint Pompeo and the assistant from both CIA. One will be going to the CIA, the other one will be going to the Secretary of State. And I find that pretty dangerous because they're into torture and all that, and pro-surveillance, etc. And I know on the other side too, Trump's been cleaning the house. It looks like McMaster and Sessions' job may be in jeopardy, including McBain. And I understand because the FBI has been very corrupt for a long time. A lot of characters has been happening, which the mainstream news don't want to know about either. So there's a lot of cloak and dagger going on in this, within the cabinet itself. And of course, the big news don't want you to know about that. And I tell people this: I'm not a Trump lover, but I always try to see all sides of the angle as well. If I'm critical, I'm going to have merit, not being a parent. However, this is here from Hornberger's blog, which is from the founder of the Freedom Foundation, FFFF.org. This is entitled Operation Mongoose in North Korea. And as it reads here, in reporting on President Trump's nomination of CIA Director Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State, the New York Times made a remarkable admission. Mr. Pompeo has consistently taken over one of the most hawkish lines on dealing with Pyongyang. He appears focused on regime change as one sure way to resolve the North Korean problem. This week, he told Fox News that never before have we had North Korea in a position where their economy was at such risk, where their leadership was such under pressure. The United States, he says, should not make concessions in any negotiations. Unfortunately, while many U.S. officials will look upon that paragraph nonchalantly, it actually goes a long way to explain why North Korea embarked on a program acquired through nuclear weapons. To understand the import of the point that the Times makes about Pompeo, it is helpful to examine a top-secret document of the U.S. National Security Establishment, a document that was kept secret from the American people for more than 40 years. In fact, the only reason that we are able to see it because of JFK's Records Act, which mandated that the Pentagon, CIA, and other federal agencies release to the public all their records related to the assassination of President Kennedy. The particular document wasn't released until 1998. This document related to Operation Mongoose, which was a top-secret regime change plan of the U.S. National Security Establishment, one intended to oust the communist regime in Cuba, headed by Fidel Castro, and replaced with a pro-U.S. dictatorship, similar to the Fulgencio Batista's regime that Cuban revolutionaries ousted from power in their 1959 revolution. Keep in mind one important factor. Although Cuba was ruled by a communist regime, it never attacked the United States or even threatened to do so. It also never assassinated anyone in the United States, and it never committed any act of sabotage in the United States. Nonetheless, the top-secret document starts out with the following sentence. The U.S. objective is to help Cubans overthrow the communist regime from within Cuba and to institute a new government with which the United States can live in peace. It's more like a puppet regime. A little bit of history here. Live in peace. The Cuban regime was living in peace with the United States. It simply wasn't bowing or kowtowing to the United States and following its orders on how things were going to operate inside Cuba. That's what the Pentagon and CIA considered not living in peace with the United States. That's why they wanted to effect regime change in Cuba. It is, in fact, why they are still dead set on regime change in North Korea. Among the methods employed to effect regime change in Cuba was the infliction of massive economic suffering among Cuban populace. The document even refers to this as economic warfare. That's what the U.S. embargo was and is all about. The idea was that when the Cuban people were suffering enough, perhaps even died, they would oust the Castro regime and replace it with a pro-U.S. regime. It's also what the sanctions against North Korea is all about. So technically we're saying it's an act of war. Needless to say, there was no concern expressed for the Cuban people suffering or dying from the embargo. They were considered a means to an end. In fact, they're just numbers with the CIA and the imperialism of government. And just an example. In fact, many years later, we saw this phenomenon in Iraq when U.S. officials were killing hundreds of thousands of Iraqi children with their sanctions on that country. Their indifference to that suffering was reflected by what the U.S. ambassador to UN, Madeleine Albright, publicly stated that the deaths of 500,000 Iraqi children were worth it. By it, she meant regime change in Iraq. Sabotage of Cuban industries was another method to bring about regime change. One idea was to introduce a corrosive element in locomotive fuel, much more ominous, given the increased likelihood that people would die. Was a plan to introduce corrosive elements into Cuban jet fuel. The document was also referred to other U.S. actions to foment dissent and revolution against the Castro regime, to be followed by U.S. military action to assist them. Unmentioned in the document was the top secret assassination partnership that the CIA had entered. We got some people walking around here, so that's okay. That's all good. The document also refers to U.S. actions to foment dissent and revolution against the Cuban regime, to be followed with U.S. military action to assist them. Unmentioned in the document was a top-secret assassination partnership that the CIA had entered into with the mafia without consent of knowledge of President Kennedy, whose brother Robert was at the same time prosecuting the mafia in federal court for criminal activity. The CIA's notion was that it was wielding the legitimate moral and legal authority to murder anyone who it deemed was a threat to U.S. national security. The mafia, of course, was chagrined that Castro has nationalized the mafia's casinos in Havana to put an end to its lucrative and illegal U.S. drug import business, much of which operates in Cuba. That top-secret Operation Mongoose regime change document is dated January 8, 1962. There is another secret document that came out in the 1990s thanks to the JFK Records Act. It was dated March 13, 1962. That document detailed Operation Northwoods, which called for plane hijacking and terrorist attacks on American soil carried out by U.S. agents secretly posing as Cuban communists. There was an idea to provide President Kennedy with an official and false pretext for attacking and invading Cuba and effecting regime change there. It was unanimously endorsed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. To his everlasting credit, Kennedy rejected the plan, earning him even a deeper enmity from this national security establishment. And you can get a book on that, JFK's War with the National Security Establishment, why Kennedy was assassinated by Douglas Home. One of the reasons, and regime change, the JFK assassination by Jacob G. Hamburger, the guy who wrote this blog, okay? Pretty interesting here. So check it out. The Cubans invited the Soviets to install nuclear weapons later that year. In October 1962, while U.S. officials have long described the missiles as offensive, the Cuban position was actually quite defensive, if and only if you attack and invade us. We will defend ourselves with our Soviet-provided nuclear weapons. Fortunately, the United States and the world, President Kennedy ended up by blinking by agreeing not to invade Cuba to deep the anger and rage of the Pentagon and CIA, which was pressuring him to attack and invade during the entire crisis. Given that threat of the invasion was over, the Soviet Union in turn removed its nuclear missiles from Cuba. Does anyone think that North Korea hasn't familiarized itself with Operation Mongoose, Operation Northwoods, the CIA Mafia Assassination Partnership, and these particular documents that were kept secret for more than 40 years? They know what the U.S. national security establishment is up to in Korea. They know what the New York Times has pointed out. CIA's director, Mike Pompeo, desire for a regime change in North Korea. They are not stupid. They know that nuclear weapons are the best way to deter against a U.S. regime change operation in North Korea. Like Kim Jong-un or not, it's up to the people in Korea to decide what they want. And I know for a fact, too, there's reports that South and North Korea are trying to reconcile the differences and live in harmony. Why should we the United States, on our tax dollars, go for another Operation Northwoods and Mongoose move? Come on, folks. That's why, if you read Blowback by Chalmers Johansson, there's a chapter on Korea which the CIA blundered and they blew back in their faces. Something to look at. Everyone gets a little up and tight about Kim Jong-un this, Kim Jong-un that. Hey, I'm not praising the guy by any means. They have issues in that country. I'm not going to argue about that. But you think if they in the country is going to save us from the world? You better start studying your history. Death by government, for goodness sakes. And don't get me wrong, even the United States government has some lots of rough edges with the tyrannical games and people trying to nosy around others' affairs. Would you like it if someone knocks on your door telling you when you can have make love to your wife or take a dump? I don't. None of their damn business, right? That's what's been happening. Sticking everyone noses don't belong. That's what we call collisions. Everyone's worried about the Russian collision. Come on. The United States have collisions with other countries and how they think want to wipe their butts under these so-called higher agencies, secret agencies. And so that's why I always drive me crazy if people want to defend an empire. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid or get your head out of the sand in Bizarro World. Get out of it. Wake up and look at the bigger picture. I always stress this. Folks, you need to read the Federalist and any Federalist papers, even though there's some differences behind it. However, they have something in common. They were against an empire. Okay? Plain and simple. So do your homework, my friends. Instead of assuming what some Yahoo in a suit and tie reading out of the teleprompter is going to tell you what's right or wrong. All right, I'm going to do this one here. It'll be last. I'm doing this real short and sweet. It's from LouRockwell.com. President Trump and Freedom of Speech by Andrew P. Napolitano. When Madison drafted the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. He made sure to use the article "the" in the front of the word freedom. What seemed normal to him and superfluous to moderns was actually a profound signal that has resonated for 227 years. The signal was that because the freedom of speech existed before the government that was formed to protect it came into existence. Does it have its origins in government? Freedom of speech has its origins in our humanity. It's a natural right. Like the Ninth Amendment, natural right. Bill of Rights are natural rights. It exists in the absence of government. By the exercise of normal human reasoning, all rational people are drawn to exercise this freedom. Madison understood this. How he could have written, Congress shall grant freedom of speech? He did not, because that freedom is not Congress to grant or to abridge. I am presenting this thumbnail sketch of this historical and philosophical underpinnings of the freedom of speech by way of background to a hot dispute now raging off the front pages. This dispute addresses whether the President of the United States can use federal courts to block the exercise of this right. CBS News wants to air an interview with an adult film actress who alleges a sexual relationship with Donald Trump. A relationship he denies, and President Trump wants to prevent the airing. The actress, whose stage name is Stormy Daniels, signed an agreement in October 2016 to accept $130,000 in return for remaining silent about her alleged sexual relationship with Trump, which she claimed occurred shortly after the birth of his son Barron, who is now almost 12. The lawyer who negotiated the agreement with Daniels' lawyer claimed that he was doing this on his own, that the hush money came from him and not Trump, and that Trump was not his client. The claim raises profound campaign finance issues, but they are not in the point of this piece. The point about this piece is about freedom of speech. Daniels, whose present lawyer has sued to invalidate the agreement, recently gave an interview about her relationship with Trump to the CBS News program 60 Minutes. CBS plans to air that interview in the coming weeks. All right, so interesting there, of course. And Trump wants to prevent that from happening. The stated legal basis for Trump's lawyers asking the court to block the broadcast is the existence of the hush agreement, which is, in plain words, bars Daniels from discussing anything about her alleged sexual relationship with Trump. Obviously, Trump does not want any allegations from Daniels, true or false, to become a topic of public conversation and distraction to his presidency. Can a president legally persuade a federal court to enjoin the airing of an interview? In a word, no. Here is the backstory. In 1931, a famous case, Neer versus Minnesota, the Supreme Court generally rejected the concept of prior restraint. Prior restraint is used of the courts to prevent the media from disseminating materials they already have. The Neer case dealt with an anti-Catholic, anti-Semitic, anti-African American newspaper that Minnesota state courts had silenced. The Supreme Court overruled the case courts and held that the freedom of speech presumed that individuals will decide for themselves what to read and hear, and the First Amendment keeps the government, which here includes the courts, from censoring the marketplace of ideas and even hateful ideas. 40 years later, the Pentagon Papers case, the Supreme Court made a similar ruling there. Daniel Ellsberg, an employee of a contractor to the Department of Defense, stole highly classified documents that demonstrated that then President Lyndon B. Johnson, B stands for backstabber, okay, and his generals had knowingly deceived the American public about the war in Vietnam. When Ellsberg gave the documents in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Nixon administration hurriedly persuaded a federal judge in New York to enjoin the Times from publishing the documents. Before a federal judge in Washington could rule on a similar request, by bypassing the intermediate appellate court, the Supreme Court took the case and ruled in favor of the freedom of speech and reinforced the judicial commendation of prior restraint. But the Pentagon Papers ruling went a step further than the Neer opinion had. It ruled that no matter how a media outlet has acquired material to the public interest, even by theft of top secret documents, the outlet is free to publish them. This, of course, does not absolve the thief, though the case against Ellsberg was dismissed because of FBI misconduct, but it makes clear that no court can block the media from revealing what they reasonably believe the public wants to hear. Now back to the president and the adult film star. Because whether Daniels said the CBS arguably speaks to Trump's fitness for office, individuals have the right to learn of it, to hear Trump's denials, and to form their own opinions. In Trump's case, he has a bigger megaphone than CBS does. Via his adroit use of social media, and the volume and ferocity of his denials might carry the day. But point here is that individuals can make their own minds up about the president's character. Yeah, I just escaped too deep here. They don't have to endure the prior restraint of a court silencing the voice in debate, even authority voice. What if the hush money agreement Daniel signed, the president did not, is valid? That could trigger the prior restraint. In a word, no. The Madisonian values underpinning the freedom of speech as articulately consistently by the Supreme Court will prevail. Anything short of that would provide government censorship over personal choices in the matter of speech, a preference the First Amendment profoundly rejects. And the judge is absolutely correct, like it or not. Remember what James Madison said about the First Amendment, free speech. It protects the minority against the majority. So whether if you like Trump or not, he cannot stop this person from speaking their mind. So you have to always see things in the bigger picture. If you support Trump's actions on this, then you're against freedom of speech. Then you just breach your oath breach your oath as a registered voter and declare yourself as anti-Bill of Rights. Principle over party. That's it. If you can't handle that, Go back to your cave, but don't tell me what kind of decisions I make, how to think, what can I read, what can I observe. Because I know one thing, Larry Flint will be calling him out. You know, I'm not crazy about the man in a lot of areas, but at least he has that guts when it comes to free speech. So he would back up what Judge Napolitano has to say. And be very frank, that is it. I thank everyone for listening, plus feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you say something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. You can get me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Breaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Minds.com, FutureNet.club, Patreon.com/LevelUp3, and Gab is gab.ai. And all we can do, a patron, Level Up is 3 eyes altogether. And Gab is a freer speech version of Twitter, allegedly speaking. But we've been talking about censorship, so I'm just giving you guys know I have other options here. In addition, you can email me at lookandluck3@gmail.com, or if anyone has a Proton account, encrypted ones, lookandluck03@protonmail.com. All right, my friends, that's all for now. Once again, thank you for your time. But remember that demoniac resistance is something for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. May your guardian spirits be with you.